Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something that most of us don't give enough attention to: our silence. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it is a powerful force, one that can shape the atmosphere around us and leave people with more questions than answers. But why does your silence scare everyone? Let's dive into that. We live in a world filled with noise. Everywhere we go, there's sound, conversations, distractions, technology, and a constant stream of information. It is in this chaos that your silence stands out. In a world that thrives on expression and communication, your silence becomes the loudest message of all. You are not just refusing to speak, you are refusing to conform to the noise that surrounds you. You see, silence is a mirror to the soul. When you are silent, you are not merely quiet. You are presenting an enigma. People do not know what you are thinking, what you are planning, or what you truly desire. Your silence forces others to confront their own uncertainty. It creates a space of discomfort because when people do not hear you, they begin to wonder, what are you hiding? What power do you hold that requires you to remain silent? Your silence speaks volumes. It declares that you do not need to be heard in the same way others do. It challenges the assumptions that people make about power, influence, and communication. It says you are not defined by external noise. You control the narrative not by talking, but by choosing when and where to speak. Your silence forces people to ask themselves, what is it about this person that commands such stillness? But the fear your silence instills goes deeper. It is not just fear of the unknown. It is fear of your potential. Silence is the breeding ground for thought, reflection, and wisdom. When you do not speak, people are left wondering what you know that they don't. What vision you are holding that has not yet been revealed. They know you are calculating, deliberate, and strategic. You are not impulsive. Your thoughts are not scattered like the rest of the world's. They are intentional. And that, my friends, can be terrifying. People are afraid of what you might be thinking, what you might be planning, and what you might accomplish in silence. This is why your silence is so powerful. It keeps others on edge. It makes them question themselves, their motivations, and their place in the world. Your silence challenges them to look inward. It forces them to deal with their insecurities and their own need for validation through constant noise. And then there's the most powerful part of your silence. It reveals your strength. You do not need to make noise to prove your existence. You do not need validation from others because your value comes from within. Your silence is the embodiment of self-control, confidence, and mastery. The world fears the individual who understands their worth without needing to speak it aloud. The person who can be still and yet move mountains, who can be quiet and yet create ripples of change. So why does your silence scare everyone? Because it is a reminder that power doesn't always shout. Influence doesn't always demand attention. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is not through words, but through your ability to remain silent and command the room without uttering a single sound. In a world that constantly urges us to speak, to be loud, to be seen, remember this: your silence is not your weakness, it is strength. Your silence allows you to see, to think, to reflect, and to rise above the noise. Silence is often misunderstood in a world that prizes expression, communication, and noise. In societies where people are encouraged to speak up, be heard, and stand out, silence is frequently viewed as weakness, hesitation, or passivity. But this perception is far from the truth. Silence in its purest form is a powerful force. It is not the absence of sound, but the presence of deep thought, control, and the ability to influence without uttering a single word. Silence has the ability to speak volumes in ways that words never could, and it carries within it an undeniable strength. Consider for a moment a person who remains silent in a room full of noise. While others may be clamoring for attention, speaking over one another, and striving to be heard, this individual stands firm in their quietness. They are not lacking in opinion or insight, rather, they have chosen the power of silence. In doing so, they command attention in ways that shouting or constant chatter never could. When they do speak, their words have more weight, more impact, because their silence has set a stage of anticipation. People begin to wonder, what is it about this person that they do not feel the need to speak constantly? What depth of thought and experience must they have to remain so still while others are so eager to voice their opinions? In this sense, silence becomes an invitation to look deeper, to understand more, and to reconsider the value of the noise surrounding us. In many ways, silence is an assertion of control. It is an act of discipline. In a world that rewards constant communication, whether verbal or digital, the ability to refrain from speaking is a form of mastery. It signifies that the individual is not driven by external forces or the need for validation. Their sense of self-worth is not contingent on how much they say or how often they say it. The person who chooses silence has an inner strength, an inner assurance that they do not need to speak in order to be recognized or to exert influence. They have mastered the art of self-control, and this mastery becomes an intimidating force. The ability to remain quiet while others speak reveals a depth of confidence that cannot be easily shaken. Silence, then, is not a passive act, it is a deliberate choice. It is a conscious decision to observe, to think, and to respond with intention rather than impulse. When we speak too often or too quickly, we risk saying things we do not truly mean, or worse, saying things that have no lasting value. The silence that we choose, on the other hand, gives us time to reflect, to process, and to weigh the importance of our words. This kind of reflection is powerful because it means that when we do speak, our words are intentional. They are not random or hasty, but thoughtful and measured. And in a world where so many words are spoken in haste or with little regard for their consequences, the words of the person who has remained silent are more likely to be taken seriously. Moreover, silence has the ability to disrupt the status quo. In any given situation, when everyone is speaking and expressing opinions, the person who remains silent becomes a mystery. People begin to wonder what they know that others do not. What insights do they possess that make them withhold their thoughts? This creates a sense of intrigue and in many cases fear. Silence forces others to confront their own uncertainty. It brings into sharp relief the fact that not everyone needs to be heard in order to be important. In a world that often rewards loudness and boldness, silence challenges the notion that visibility equates to power. It reminds us that there is strength in stillness and wisdom in restraint. The person who is able to remain silent is not irrelevant. In fact, they become even more significant because their silence speaks louder than words ever could. Furthermore, silence can be a means of asserting boundaries. In relationships, whether personal or professional, silence can communicate that certain things are off limits. It can indicate a refusal to engage with negativity, drama, or unnecessary conflict. When people choose to remain silent in the face of provocation or criticism, they are asserting their boundaries and communicating that they will not allow themselves to be drawn into situations that do not serve their peace of mind or personal growth. In this way, silence becomes a protective shield. It is not retreating or avoiding, it is an active choice to disengage from what is unworthy of attention. And when others recognize that this person will not be easily pulled into conflict or turmoil, they begin to treat that silence with respect. The power of silence extends beyond the individual level and impacts groups, organizations, and entire societies. Leaders who understand the power of silence often wield it as a strategic tool. They recognize that by remaining silent, they can control the flow of information and steer conversations in the direction they choose. Silence in this context is not a void, but a space for careful consideration. It creates an environment where people must think before they speak, where they must truly understand the weight of their words. This forces those around the leader to be more thoughtful, more intentional, and more strategic in their own communication. In essence, silence allows the leader to set the pace, establish the tone, and maintain control without having to dominate the conversation. There is also a profound strength in silence that allows individuals to heal, grow, and reflect. In moments of deep personal struggle or emotional turmoil, silence provides a space for introspection. It is in these quiet moments that we come face to face with our inner selves, where we confront our fears, insecurities, and desires. Silence is the fertile ground in which self-awareness and personal transformation take root. By remaining silent, we give ourselves permission to process our emotions and thoughts without external distractions. This internal work is what gives us the strength to move forward, to make better decisions, and to live more authentically. The power of silence is transformative because it allows us to reconnect with ourselves and find clarity in moments of confusion. Moreover, silence can be a form of resistance. In times of injustice or oppression, those who are silenced by forces beyond their control often find ways to resist through silence. Silence becomes an act of defiance. It becomes a refusal to comply with oppressive systems or ideologies that seek to silence the truth. In these moments, silence is not weakness, it is strength. It is a refusal to be controlled by forces that seek to diminish the voice of the individual or the collective. The power of silence in this context lies in its ability to resist without being loud, to stand firm without being confrontational. Silence in the face of injustice can be a powerful form of protest because it signals that what is happening cannot be ignored or accepted. Silence is also a reflection of the power of presence. Sometimes we do not need to speak to make a difference. Our mere presence can communicate volumes. In times of grief, sorrow, or distress, people may not need words of comfort. They need the quiet support of someone who simply stands by them. In these moments, silence becomes a way to connect on a deeper level, a way to communicate empathy, understanding, and solidarity. The person who can remain silent in such moments is demonstrating an understanding of the power of presence, and this quiet solidarity can be more meaningful than any words of consolation. In the end, silence is not a passive or neutral force. It is an active, powerful choice that can shape conversations, influence outcomes, and communicate ideas without a single word being spoken. Silence is the space in which wisdom is born, reflection takes place, and strength is cultivated. It is the tool of the thoughtful, the deliberate, and the wise. In a world that often values loudness and immediacy, silence remains one of the most potent forms of expression. It is not merely the absence of sound, it is the presence of power. Silence reflects inner strength in a way that few other things in life can. It is often misunderstood as a sign of weakness, an inability to express oneself, or an absence of ideas. However, true silence is not born of fear, doubt, or hesitation, but of a profound inner strength, a strength that emerges from a deep sense of self-control, clarity, and confidence. It is a strength that allows an individual to remain calm, collected, and focused amidst the noise and chaos of the world. In silence, the true power of an individual often comes into full view, not because they are quiet, but because they have mastered the art of restraint, patience, and wisdom. In a world that encourages constant communication, interaction, and self-expression, silence stands in stark contrast. The temptation to fill every moment with sound, to speak in order to be heard, and to assert oneself at every opportunity can be overwhelming. Yet those who understand the power of silence recognize that there is great strength in choosing when and how to speak. Silence allows one to avoid the noise that distracts from their inner thoughts and helps maintain focus on what truly matters. It is a conscious decision to allow the mind to breathe, to reflect, and to gain clarity before acting or speaking. This kind of inner strength comes not from an inability to express oneself, but from the wisdom to understand that sometimes speaking is not the most powerful form of expression. At its core, silence is a reflection of control. It is the ability to quiet the external world in order to listen to the internal one. People who are able to remain silent in moments of stress, conflict, or tension demonstrate a level of self-discipline that few can achieve. They do not feel the need to fill every moment with chatter or defend themselves at every turn. Instead, they take a step back and listen, whether it is to the situation, to others, or to their own thoughts. In this silence, they give themselves the space to process, to evaluate, and to respond with intention rather than reaction. This ability to control one's impulses, to remain composed even in the face of provocation, speaks volumes about the inner strength that lies beneath the surface. True inner strength is not about how loudly one can speak or how frequently one can assert themselves, but rather about the ability to remain still, to resist the urge to react impulsively, and to respond with thoughtfulness and purpose. It takes great strength to sit in silence, particularly in moments when one is expected to speak or when others around them are engaging in conversation or debate. The person who remains silent in these moments is not simply being passive or disengaged. They are actively choosing not to be swayed by the noise around them. They are, in effect, exercising their power to remain grounded in their own sense of self, unaffected by the external pressures that would otherwise compel them to speak or act without consideration. In silence, we often discover our true power. When we stop speaking and start listening, whether to others or to our own hearts, we are able to gain clarity about our desires, our purpose, and our direction. Silence allows us to step outside the distractions and demands of the world and reconnect with our deeper selves. It is in these moments of stillness that we find our strength. The person who has mastered the art of silence knows that they do not need the approval of others, the validation of their words, or the need to dominate a conversation to establish their worth. They understand that their power comes from within, and that sometimes the most powerful thing they can do is to remain silent and allow their actions to speak louder than any words could. In this way, silence is not just a reflection of inner strength, but also a manifestation of wisdom. It takes wisdom to understand that not all battles are won through words, and not all situations require a verbal response. Silence is the art of knowing when to speak and when to remain still. It is the wisdom to recognize that the loudest voice in the room is not always the most effective one, and that true influence is often exerted through quiet confidence and composure. When we choose silence, we demonstrate that we are not driven by the need to be heard, to prove ourselves, or to seek validation. We are driven by a deeper understanding of our own value and the knowledge that we do not need to be loud to make an impact. The power of silence also lies in its ability to communicate strength without words. There are times in life when words fall short, when language cannot fully capture the depth of our emotions or the complexity of a situation. In these moments, silence speaks for us. It conveys our feelings, our thoughts, and our presence in ways that words cannot. For instance, in times of grief, pain, or sorrow, silence often speaks louder than any words of comfort. The person who sits silently beside someone who is grieving is not offering empty phrases or cliched responses. Instead, they are offering something far more powerful, their presence. Their silence communicates that they are there, that they understand, and that they are not trying to fix or explain away the pain. In this sense, silence becomes a form of strength, one that transcends words and conveys a deep, empathetic understanding. In the realm of leadership, silence is a sign of strength and authority. Great leaders understand that they do not need to speak constantly or dominate every conversation. They understand the value of listening, observing, and reflecting before responding. By remaining silent in situations where others might feel the need to speak, leaders show that they are not easily swayed by the opinions of others and that they are comfortable in their own skin. They know that their actions, not their words, define them. When leaders choose silence, they also demonstrate their ability to remain calm under pressure, to assess situations objectively, and to make decisions with clarity and foresight. This kind of silent authority commands respect because it is rooted in self-confidence and an unwavering belief in one's ability to lead without needing to speak excessively. Silence is also an essential tool for emotional regulation. It takes immense strength to hold back from reacting in moments of anger, frustration, or disappointment. The person who is able to stay silent in such moments is not suppressing their emotions but exercising control over them. They understand that reacting in the heat of the moment can often lead to regret, while silence provides the necessary space to process emotions and respond in a more measured and constructive way. This ability to regulate one's emotions through silence is a sign of profound inner strength because it demonstrates emotional maturity and self-mastery. The person who can remain silent in times of tension or conflict shows that they are not controlled by their emotions, but rather that they are in command of them. In relationships, silence can also be a reflection of inner strength. In the face of conflict, misunderstandings, or disagreements, many people feel compelled to speak, to argue, or to defend their position. However, the person who can choose silence in these moments demonstrates that they are not seeking to win the argument or prove themselves right. Instead, they are more concerned with maintaining peace, understanding, and connection. They recognize that silence can be a powerful tool for de-escalating tension and allowing time for reflection before a response is given. This ability to remain silent in the midst of conflict shows a high level of emotional intelligence and a deep commitment to the health of the relationship. In essence, silence is not the absence of strength, it is the presence of it. The person who is able to remain silent in difficult situations is demonstrating a profound level of self-control, wisdom, and emotional intelligence. They understand that silence is not a sign of passivity, but rather an active choice to preserve inner peace, to reflect before responding, and to communicate in ways that are more powerful than words. Silence allows us to tap into a well of inner strength that is not contingent on external validation or approval. It is a strength that comes from within, from a deep sense of self-assurance and clarity of purpose. It is in silence that we find the power to listen, to reflect, and to act with intention and wisdom. Silence breeds fear of the unknown in ways that are often subtle but profoundly powerful. It creates an atmosphere of uncertainty, leaving others to wonder what lies behind the quiet. People are conditioned to expect communication, expression, and verbal interaction. In a world where talking is a social norm, silence stands in stark contrast. It holds within it a mystery, an unanswered question that can trigger anxiety in others. When a person remains silent, especially in situations where speech is expected, it forces those around them to grapple with what they do not know. The absence of words does not just leave a void, it stirs curiosity, insecurity, in fear of what is left unsaid. Silence is often uncomfortable for those who encounter it because it disrupts the familiar rhythms of conversation. It introduces an unfamiliar element into the social exchange. When someone is silent, others are left to interpret their motives, their emotions, and their thoughts. The silence becomes a puzzle, and people are instinctively inclined to fill that void with their own assumptions, speculations, or fears. What is this person thinking? Why aren't they speaking? Did I do something wrong? These questions arise because silence creates a gap in understanding, and human nature compels us to seek closure to that gap. The discomfort that arises from not knowing is what breeds fear. Silence highlights the unknown, and the unknown is often more frightening than the known. In the context of interpersonal relationships, silence can be especially daunting. When a person chooses not to speak, others may interpret that silence in various ways. They may fear that the silent individual is harboring resentment, anger, or disappointment. The unknown nature of the silence leads to an internal dialogue in the minds of those who are left in the dark. They may try to read the body language, facial expressions, or any other nonverbal cues, but there is always an inherent uncertainty. This uncertainty breeds fear because people are uncomfortable with what they cannot control or predict. Silence, by its very nature, denies others the comfort of knowing what is going on inside the silent person's mind, and that lack of clarity causes anxiety. On a broader scale, silence can breed fear in group dynamics or even in larger societal contexts. When a leader, for instance, chooses to remain silent during a time of crisis or uncertainty, the effect can be profound. People look to their leaders for direction, reassurance, and guidance. Silence from a leader, especially in moments of crisis, can cause panic, confusion, and fear. It leaves others wondering if there is something they are not being told, if the situation is worse than it appears, or if the leader is simply uncertain themselves. Silence in this context can amplify the sense of helplessness and fear because it leaves room for speculation. The silence of a leader becomes a mirror reflecting the unknown, and that unknown can be much more terrifying than the reality. People fear what they cannot grasp, what they cannot predict, and silence ensures that there is no clear answer to their questions. Fear of the unknown is a deep-seated human instinct. It has evolutionary roots in prehistoric times. The unknown could signify danger. A rustling in the bushes could be a predator. A shadow in the distance could be a threat. Our ancestors learned to be cautious of things they could not immediately understand or predict. This same fear exists today, albeit in more abstract forms. When people encounter something or someone that does not conform to their expectations, such as silence, they often revert to this primal fear of what lies beyond their understanding. Silence forces individuals to confront the possibility that they are not in control, that they do not have access to all the information, and that there is something lurking just out of reach. This uncertainty triggers anxiety because it removes the comfort of predictability. It is the fear of what is not known, of what might be concealed beneath the surface. In relationships, silence can breed a particular kind of fear, the fear of abandonment or disconnection. When someone goes silent, especially in a close relationship, the person on the receiving end may fear that they are being rejected or pushed away. Silence in this case can be perceived as a form of withdrawal, and this withdrawal is often interpreted as a sign of emotional distance. The fear of this distance is not just about the current silence, but about what it signifies for the future. What will happen next? Will the relationship continue? The person left in silence is forced to wrestle with their own fears and insecurities. The unknowns loom large. Is the silence a sign of a temporary conflict, or is it a permanent shift in the relationship? Is this the beginning of an end, or simply a moment of pause? The fear of silence can also be rooted in self-doubt. People who are not accustomed to silence may interpret it as a reflection of their own inadequacy. When others are quiet around them, they may feel responsible, questioning if they have said or done something to cause discomfort or disconnection. Silence, in this sense, amplifies the feeling of being unworthy or unimportant. It brings to the surface insecurities about one's own value, making the unknown aspects of the situation feel even more daunting. This can lead to a cycle of anxiety where the fear of not knowing what is happening in the silence feeds into the fear of being rejected or ignored. The unknown becomes not just about the external situation, but about the person's own standing in the relationship or group. Culturally, silence can breed fear on a societal level as well. When a society or group of people faces uncertainty, be it political, social, or economic, the silence of influential figures can create a sense of unease. Leaders who remain silent in times of crisis can cause their followers to fear what is not being communicated. People may speculate about the reasons for the silence. Is the leader withholding information? Are they hiding something? Are they unsure of what to do? The absence of communication can create a vacuum of information, and human nature tends to fill that vacuum with fears and worst-case scenarios. In moments of crisis, people crave certainty, and when silence prevails, it forces them to confront the terrifying unknown. The longer the silence persists, the more the fear grows, and the more people search for answers that may not come until it is too late. Silence also has a way of heightening the stakes in situations where conflict or confrontation is involved. When individuals are engaged in a difficult conversation, whether it be personal or professional, silence can be perceived as an attempt to avoid resolution, to withhold the truth, or to hide feelings. Silence in these moments can leave others feeling like they are in the dark, unable to understand the true nature of the situation. The uncertainty can breed fear that the conflict is either unresolved or that the individual is unwilling to confront the issue. When people feel that they cannot access the necessary information, they are left to rely on their imaginations, which tend to run wild with all the possible outcomes, many of which are worse than reality. The fear comes not from knowing what is being said, but from knowing that something remains hidden. Moreover, silence breeds fear because it is often associated with power. The person who chooses silence in a conversation, in a negotiation, or in a moment of tension exerts control over the situation. This control is disconcerting because it leaves others scrambling to fill the void, to gain favor, or to make sense of the silence. The silent individual holds the upper hand, dictating the pace of the conversation and forcing others to follow their lead. This power dynamic, rooted in silence, is unsettling because it keeps the others on edge, unable to predict the next move. Silence, therefore, becomes not just a void, but an instrument of influence that generates fear by keeping others off balance and uncertain. Ultimately, silence breeds fear of the unknown because it creates an environment where speculation, insecurity, and uncertainty thrive. When we do not know what someone is thinking, feeling, or intending, our minds naturally fill in the gaps with our own fears and anxieties. Silence forces us to confront the limits of our understanding and the discomfort of not knowing. In relationships, in leadership, and in societal contexts, silence holds the power to unsettle and to leave us questioning what lies beyond the surface. The fear of what is hidden, what is unsaid, and what is unexpressed grows in the absence of communication. The unknown becomes a space where our imaginations run wild, and that is what makes silence so profoundly unsettling. The fear it breeds is not just a fear of what may be, but a fear of what we cannot see, hear, or understand. Silence challenges the noise of the world in ways that many might not fully grasp. In a world where sound is constant, where the hum of technology, the clamor of social media, and the constant barrage of information demand our attention, silence becomes not just an absence of sound, but a powerful statement. It is a counterpoint to the noise, a declaration that there is another way to engage with life, with the world, and with our own thoughts. In many ways, silence stands as a challenge to the very rhythms of modern existence, where everyone is encouraged to speak, to share, and to be heard. In the midst of all the noise, silence can be both a refuge and a revolutionary act, forcing us to confront the overwhelming distractions that dominate our lives. The noise of the world is pervasive. It fills the spaces between moments, occupying the airwaves, the screens, and the minds of those around us. It is a noise that demands attention, that insists on its own importance, and that often drowns out the more subtle, profound messages that require a quiet space in order to be heard. The noise of the world is not just the sound of conversation, music, or media. It is also the noise of our thoughts, our emotions, and our reactions to everything that happens around us. We live in a time where distraction is at our fingertips, where every moment can be filled with something to do, something to watch, something to read, or something to hear. This constant noise creates a sense of urgency, pushing us to fill every moment with activity, to stay engaged, to stay informed, and to stay connected. Silence in the face of this noise becomes an act of resistance. It is a deliberate choice to step back from the constant bombardment of information and to find space to breathe. Silence forces us to question the necessity of all the noise, to confront the fact that much of it is superficial, unnecessary, and often detrimental to our well-being. In silence, we are given the opportunity to turn off the external noise and to listen to something deeper. Silence challenges us to slow down, to step away from the chaos, and to find clarity in the stillness. It is in this space of quiet that we can hear the whispers of our own thoughts, the stirrings of our own hearts, and the truths that lie beneath the surface of our everyday lives. In many ways, silence is a form of liberation. It liberates us from the constant pull of external demands, from the pressure to conform to societal expectations, and from the need to always be doing something. The world often measures success by how much we do, how much we produce, and how much we contribute to the noise around us. Silence challenges this definition of success by emphasizing being overdoing. In silence, we find that we are enough as we are, without the need to constantly prove our worth or seek validation from the outside world. Silence teaches us that there is power in stillness, in being present without the need to fill every moment with words or action. In the modern world, silence is often misunderstood. It is frequently equated with emptiness, passivity, or weakness. People fear silence because it forces them to confront their own inner world, and for many, that world can be uncomfortable or unsettling. The noise of the world provides a constant distraction from the deeper, more uncomfortable questions we must face about ourselves and our lives. Silence, however, strips away these distractions, revealing the raw truth of our thoughts, our fears, and our desires. It is easy to get lost in the noise, to drown out the parts of ourselves we do not want to face. But silence does not allow us to hide. It forces us to reckon with what is inside, and in doing so, it challenges us to grow. Silence also challenges the noise of the world by allowing us to engage with the world in a more mindful and intentional way. In a society where multitasking is often celebrated and efficiency is prioritized above all else, silence asks us to slow down and focus. When we are silent, we are not distracted by the pull of 1,000 different thoughts and stimuli. We are not jumping from one thing to another, constantly switching gears in an attempt to keep up with the demands of the world. Instead, silence encourages us to be fully present in the moment, to listen deeply, and to observe carefully. In this way, it becomes a tool for greater awareness, for seeing things as they truly are, without the filter of noise and distraction. It challenges the tendency to live on autopilot, reacting to the world around us without fully engaging with it. Through silence, we are reminded that the quality of our attention matters more than the quantity of our actions. One of the most profound ways in which silence challenges the noise of the world is by creating space for reflection. In a world that values constant movement and progress, silence is a pause, a moment of stillness where we can step back and assess our lives. Reflection in silence allows us to process our experiences, to understand our emotions, and to gain clarity about our choices. Without silence, we are often swept up in the current of the world, reacting to situations without fully considering the consequences or the deeper meaning behind them. Silence gives us the chance to step out of the noise and take a long, hard look at our lives, our priorities, and our values. It challenges us to ask difficult questions and to seek deeper truths about who we are and what we want from life. The noise of the world often leads to a sense of fragmentation, where everything feels disconnected and disjointed. We are bombarded with information from all directions, but much of it fails to make a lasting impact because it is superficial or fleeting. Silence, however, allows us to reconnect with what truly matters. It gives us the time and space to integrate our experiences, to make sense of the world around us, and to find coherence in the chaos. When we are constantly surrounded by noise, it is easy to lose sight of what is important, to become overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information and distractions. Silence helps us to cut through the clutter and to focus on what truly matters, challenging us to prioritize our time, our energy, and our attention on the things that bring meaning and purpose to our lives. In the context of personal growth, silence challenges the noise of the world by creating an opportunity for inner transformation. The noise around us often pulls us away from our true selves, leading us to adopt the values and beliefs of others without questioning them. We live in a culture where opinions are freely shared, where everyone is expected to have an answer for everything, and where the loudest voices often dominate the conversation. Silence challenges this by creating a space where we can listen to our own inner voice. It encourages us to discover who we truly are, independent of the noise and expectations of the world. Silence invites us to question the status quo, to examine our beliefs, and to cultivate a deeper sense of self-awareness. In this space of quiet, we can reflect on our experiences, our mistakes, and our successes, and we can learn to grow from them in a way that is authentic to our own journey. Moreover, silence challenges the noise of the world by fostering deep connection. In a world that is increasingly disconnected, where relationships are often mediated by screens and social media, silence invites us to engage in more meaningful interactions. Silence allows for presence, for being fully attentive to the other person without the need for constant words. In a conversation, silence can be powerful. It creates space for contemplation, for empathy, and for understanding. It challenges the notion that communication must always be verbal or immediate. Sometimes the most profound connections happen in the moments of silence, when we are not speaking but simply being with one another. Silence allows us to be fully present with another person, to listen not only to their words but to their feelings, their intentions, and their unspoken thoughts. In this way, silence helps to deepen relationships, to foster true connection, and to challenge the superficiality of many modern interactions. Silence also plays a significant role in creativity. The noise of the world can stifle our creativity, drowning out the inspiration that arises in moments of stillness. The constant pressure to produce, to consume, and to be constantly engaged can leave little room for the kind of reflective thinking that sparks new ideas. Silence creates the conditions for creativity to thrive. It is in the quiet moments when we are free from distraction that our minds can wander, explore, and innovate. Silence challenges the misconception that creativity requires constant action or external input. In fact, silence often provides the fertile ground from which the most profound ideas and solutions emerge. In the face of all the noise in the world, silence challenges us to find balance, to create space for introspection, and to reclaim the power of stillness. It forces us to confront the distractions that often keep us from living with intention and purpose. Silence invites us to step away from the noise, to listen to the world within and around us, and to rediscover the quiet power that lies beneath the surface of our busy lives. The world may be loud, but in silence we find the courage to challenge it. Silence is often perceived as an absence, a void where words and actions are missing. Yet, in its most profound and powerful form, silence is not merely the lack of sound, but rather a deliberate statement. It is a statement that speaks volumes without uttering a single word, communicating something deeper, more resonant, and more impactful than anything that could be said. Silence, in this sense, transcends its status as a passive absence and becomes a tool for expression, a medium through which we can communicate ideas, emotions, and intentions that words alone might fail to convey. In a world that is dominated by constant noise, the never-ending flow of conversations, media, and distractions, it is easy to overlook the power of silence. Yet, silence has always been a powerful form of communication. It can challenge the status quo, provoke thought, and compel reflection. Silence is not neutral, it has weight. It is not simply the absence of sound, it is the presence of something much more profound. In the quiet moments when we choose to remain silent, we are making a statement about what we value, what we believe, and what we need. Silence, in this way, becomes a declaration, a message in and of itself. One of the most powerful aspects of silence is that it demands attention. In a world where we are constantly bombarded with stimuli, where every moment is filled with noise and activity, silence stands out. It commands a pause, a moment of reflection. When someone chooses silence, it forces those around them to confront it. The silence cannot be ignored. It challenges people to pay attention, to wonder what is being communicated through the absence of words. It creates an air of anticipation, a sense of waiting for something that has not yet come. Silence, therefore, becomes a statement in its own right, signaling that something important is unfolding. It shifts the focus from external distractions to the deeper layers of meaning that may lie beneath the surface. Silence can also serve as a form of resistance. In situations where words might seem inadequate or even dangerous, silence can become a powerful means of protest. It can challenge authority, question norms, and reject the pressures of society. Silence in this context is not a passive withdrawal, but an active choice to withhold. It is a refusal to conform to the demands of those who would dictate how we should think, feel, or behave. Throughout history, silence has been used as a tool of resistance against oppression, injustice, and tyranny. Whether in the face of political censorship, social expectations, or personal conflict, silence can be a statement of defiance, an assertion of autonomy, By choosing not to speak, we reclaim our power and our voice in a world that often demands compliance and conformity. Silence is also a statement of depth. In a culture that values noise, speed, and immediate gratification, silence invites us to slow down, to reflect, and to truly listen. It challenges the prevailing mindset that action, productivity, and verbal expression are the most important markers of success. Silence invites us to turn inward, to explore the complexities of our own thoughts and emotions, and to give space for introspection. In doing so, it becomes a statement about the importance of inner work, of self-awareness, and of emotional intelligence. In a world that often prioritizes external achievements, silence reminds us that what lies within is just as valuable, if not more so. It calls us to cultivate a deeper understanding of ourselves, our relationships, and our place in the world. Silence then becomes a statement that there is power in stillness and that we do not need to be constantly moving or speaking to create value. Silence also communicates strength. In many situations, silence can be a sign of inner strength and resilience. In the face of adversity, silence can be a response that communicates a calm and unwavering confidence. It is in these moments that silence speaks louder than words. When we remain silent in the midst of conflict, when we choose not to respond in anger or frustration, we are making a statement about our own emotional maturity. Silence, in this context, becomes a form of self-control, a way of maintaining composure in the face of chaos. It signals that we are not easily swayed by external forces, that we are secure in our own beliefs, secure in convictions, and that we do not need to engage in every battle that comes our way. Silence, therefore, becomes a testament to strength, not weakness. It speaks to the power of restraint, of choosing when to act and when to withhold, and of knowing that some situations require no response at all. In relationships, silence can also be a statement of love, respect, and understanding. It may seem counterintuitive, but sometimes the most powerful way to communicate with someone is not through words, but through the silence between them. In moments of grief, sorrow, or emotional intensity, silence can offer comfort in ways that words cannot. It is the space where empathy is felt, where connection is deepened, and where shared understanding is built. Silence in these moments does not need to be filled with words because the presence of the other person, the shared experience, is enough. Silence can be a statement of emotional presence, of caring and of support. It is a recognition that some emotions are too complex or too deep for words, and that silence can carry its own form of communication. Silence, too, can be a statement of boundaries. In a world that often expects us to constantly give, share, and perform, silence can be a way of saying no without needing to justify ourselves. It is a way of setting limits, of reclaiming our time and energy, and of prioritizing our own well-being. When we choose silence in the face of pressure or expectation, we are making a statement about our need for space and our right to protect our own peace. Silence, in this way, becomes an act of self-care, a declaration that we will not be overwhelmed by the noise of the world, and that we have the right to retreat into our own thoughts and feelings when necessary. In professional settings, silence can be a statement of power and influence. Leaders who choose their words carefully and speak only when necessary often command more respect than those who speak incessantly. Silence can be a way of exerting control over a conversation, of creating an air of mystery, or of signaling that one's thoughts are deliberate and well considered. In negotiations, silence can be a strategic move, creating a space for reflection, making others feel the weight of the situation, and often prompting the other party to make concessions or offer more. In these situations, silence is not a passive absence, but a conscious choice to withhold information, to wait, and to let the other person speak first. Silence becomes a tool of influence, demonstrating that sometimes the most powerful thing to do is to remain silent. On a societal level, silence can also be a statement of solidarity. In moments of crisis or collective grief, silence can unite people in a shared purpose. Whether through a moment of silence for a lost life or a protest where people refuse to speak but gather in solidarity, silence can be a powerful means of collective expression. In these moments, the silence of a group speaks louder than words could. It communicates a shared sense of loss, of outrage, or of hope. Silence, when used in this way, becomes a symbol of unity, of shared values, and of the collective will to address injustice or inequality. It is a statement that words alone cannot capture the depth of our emotions, and that sometimes the most effective way to communicate is through the absence of speech. Silence can also serve as a form of spiritual expression. In many religious and spiritual traditions, silence is seen as a way to connect with the divine or to access a deeper state of consciousness. In prayer or meditation, silence becomes a conduit for spiritual connection, a means of transcending the noise of the material world and attuning oneself to a higher reality. In these practices, silence is not empty, it is full of potential. It is a space where divine guidance can be received, where inner peace can be found, and where the soul can find rest. Silence, in this sense, becomes a statement of faith, of devotion, and of the importance of spiritual practice in a world that often values external achievements over inner growth. Ultimately, silence is a statement, because it does not simply conform to the expectations of the world around us. In a society that prizes communication, action, and productivity, silence stands as a challenge to the status quo. It asks us to reconsider the value of stillness, the power of restraint, and the importance of listening over speaking. Silence speaks to the depth of our being, to the spaces within us that cannot be easily articulated, and to the truths that lie beyond words. In its absence of sound, silence makes a statement that is often more powerful, more honest, and more meaningful than anything that could be said aloud. So the next time you choose silence, know that you are not just avoiding words, you are making a statement. And to those who fear it, know this: your silence will always be louder than any sound they could ever make. Thank you.